Okay. Hello, everyone. We'll get started in just a moment here. We are just waiting for a few more folks to join. In the meantime, if you all can put in the chat your names, your pronouns, and where you are joining us from. So if you live in District 8 or 1 or 2 or 3 or the lucky District 7, we'd love to know that. So if you could put that in the chat. The chat's also a place for you all to have discussions as well. Oh, wait. Excellent. All right. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Um, so we'll be us as council members, we'll have to be a little flexible here, because we might have to change the show just a little bit, but we'll be fine because we're amongst our friends here. So if you are all just joining, please uh, utilize the chat. You can put your name, your pronouns, and the district that you reside. And if you live out of the district, even better. I'd love to know that. My name is Councilwoman Chantel M. Lewis, and I represent District 8. And I will pass it over to Councilwoman Alvidrez.
Hello, pronouns she, her. My name is Flora Alvidrez, and I am the councilperson for Lucky District 7. And
And
it's just us two, right?
yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing. Yeah, I think it's just us. But that's so one, I wanted to thank you all for joining, but also there are a number of council members who have are also a part of these efforts. And so thank them as well. So we have Councilwoman Parody, Gonzalez Gutierrez, Torres, Sandoval, um, Romero Campbell. Oh, thank you. Duh, it's in the book. Thanks. These are your lovely council members who have all come together to offer this budget book club. And so super excited to be engaging with you all. We do have the members of the council members staff who are also on this call. And so if you all wanted to come off mute and with your photos and just or your cameras, excuse me, and tell folks hi, that's totally acceptable as well if you're interested and which council office you're representing.
Hi, everyone. Ayn Slavis, she, her, a pronouns. I work for Councilman Jamie Torres in District 3, so that's Southwest Denver. So if there's any questions about budget in District 3, I'm happy to answer them, and I'll put my email in the chat.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, Macy Conan. I am Chief of Staff to Councilwoman Romero Campbell, who represents District 4 in Southeast Denver.
Hi everyone, I'm Zara Levy. I work for one of your two at-large council members, Councilwoman Gonzalez Gutierrez, And I'm coming to you from live inside my car while I wait for my kiddo.
Great. Is that everyone? I can't really see.
Oh, this is Jessica Zender. I'm not going to come off camera. I had something that gave me a little allergic reaction. I'm very puffy, so I prefer to stay in the shadows, mysterious, as it were.
All right.
I work for Sarah Parody, one of your other council members at large, and I will also put my email in the chat. And because if you live, work, or travel through Denver, I work for you, so I want to make sure that you have my contact information.
Perfect. Thank you. I think that's everyone, but of course, feel free to interrupt me if it's not. But I think we can just dive in. Just a quick overview. We wanted to have this discussion because the budget book is so large, and oftentimes when we see the final passage of the budget, it is not necessarily reflective of what the needs that we have heard, especially as council members, reflected in that budget book in terms of like critical needs, priorities, how we're prioritizing folks. So just to quickly go over the agenda for you all that was here, it will come back. We will do the presentation of the budget 101. We'll have some interaction with you all as audience members, and then we'll have a moderated question and answer, and then closing. So just to give you all just a little bit about the budget book club and the budget approval process. It's long, the budget approval process. And often what we hear from communities and also what we feel as council members is that it's not transparent and it's often not easy to understand. In addition to that, we have found that in order for you all to engage publicly in the budget amendment process or the approval process, there are often limited opportunities to be able to do that, and limited opportunities to meaningfully engage in the process. And so the Budget Book Club was designed to demystify the budget approval process and to empower you all, the people and our communities, to really help shape what our budget should look like. So in addition to this first kickoff, which thank you all so much for being here, we will also host a budget happy hour on Wednesday, September 24th from 3:30 to 7. We'll also have a convening of the budget proposals on Saturday, October 4th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. in order to stay engaged throughout this entire process. I will put a caveat in that is the birthday of a very special human being. And so I'm going to ask that we celebrate this person immensely and profusely because they are working on their birthday, which I don't do, and I asked them to do. And that is, of course, Councilwoman Alvidrez.
You're too sweet. And thank you.
You're welcome. So you can go to the next slide. Thank you. Okay, so the Denver Charter currently requires the city to have a budget for each calendar year. So the work on the budget is a year-long process. For example, agencies begin planning for the next year as early as February. City Council provides input in April and May, which is submitted in a letter to the mayor. And then the budget priorities can be found online and in the appendix of this PowerPoint. And I want you all to look at that because they're not budget priorities, excuse me. That council priorities can be found in the appendix. The proposed budget lands in September, which will be the 15th this year, and is usually passed in early November. And we'll get into a bit more of those important dates, but I wanted to talk about governance with you all a bit. And so under the charter, the mayor has the power to propose the budget. The mayor also controls the Department of Finance, which oversees the preparation of the budget. And so City Council is vested with the power to approve the budget, and we can also shape the budget process throughout the year by setting budget policies for the mayor to consider. Now remember, it's just consider, as well as proposing revisions and running amendments to the proposed budget. And we'll get into that in a bit more because I have found where City Council has a lot of power in the the potential for the proposed revisions, but certainly in the opportunity to come together as council members to run budget amendments. It also requires the city to keep a balanced operating budget. And so in other words, services and supplies and personnel in a given year must be paid for by existing funds. So you can't use our savings accounts, if you will, in order to be able to fund the budget. And we'll talk more about that later. The issue with this is that the city is heavily dependent on sales tax, which can be projected, but it's not certain at the time that the budget is passed. Therefore, if sales tax declines or fluctuates over the year, it may not align with the budget as it was passed. And so in order to account for this, the city holds onto a portion of the funding every year to deal with emergencies or unforeseen developments. These contingent and reserve funds are staked at a percentage of the general fund, which is the largest single source of funding in the city budget. One final requirement is that the budget is written in such a way that each agency or activity is placed within a specific fund, and we'll get into these, which is in accordance with the National Council of Government Accounting. Alrighty, you can go to the next slide, please. So I wanted to take a moment to talk about the different budget fund types, because there's a number of them. The chart on this slide is a little overwhelming, but it comes from the city's Department of Finance and is the visual depiction of where each fund lives in the budget. And like understanding it, and this chart is actually as overwhelming as it might feel. So if you feel overwhelmed already, don't worry, just join the club and we'll be okay. That's why we have the budget book club. As you can see from this chart, most of the funding types that the city realizes on from the governmental funds section, which includes the general fund, special revenue fund, and capital improvement funds. We are not going to spend too much time tonight on debt services or debt service funds, which pay back the city's debts, enterprise funds, which raise revenue for the city, like the Denver Golf Course, but are poured back into the operations for and funding of the Denver Golf Course. So we only can use it for that use. Or internal service funds, which deal with reimbursement for one city agency to another, internal service rendered, so agency to agency payments. But we are going to spend a lot of time looking at the general fund, the special revenue fund, and the capital improvement funds in the greatest of detail. All right, I will kick it off to Councilwoman Alvidrez.
Awesome. Next slide, please. So Budget 101, the general fund. The general fund is the largest bucket of money, as Councilwoman Lewis said, in the Denver budget. In the final approved budget for 2024, the general fund was $1.67 billion. General fund dollars are unencumbered, meaning these dollars can be allocated anywhere in the budget. This photo is of the general fund's composition, page 86 of the 2024 final budget book. Note that the general fund is mostly from sales and use tax in Denver. That means that when sales tax declines because people are feeling the pinch of inflation or tariffs or economic pressures, there is slow or no growth in that part of the fund, which causes budget shortfalls. Next slide is the special revenue funds, which are the next largest portion of the funding for the city budget, totaling $1.21 billion. Like the general fund, special revenues can be operational funding, personnel, and service. However, unlike general fund, special revenue funds are restricted in what they can be used for. An example is a special revenue fund for Denver is the Climate Protection Fund, which is funded off of a special fee on shopping bags. Money from the fund can only be used, and it's also a sales tax revenue. And money from that fund can only be used on 6 specific uses set by the ordinance that created that tax. There are 151 special revenue funds, not counting grants in Denver, each with their own allowable uses. Note that grants from private, state, or federal actors are a form of special revenue funds. However, the terms of the grants are even more restricted than a special revenue fund that we are discussing right now. They can only be spent on a specific purpose and with a specific time. As such, they're treated differently in the city's budget book. Here you'll see the summary of the total of the special revenue funds from 2024. And then Heinz is going to take the next slide. Do you want me to do that?
Yeah, if
Give
you'd like
you
to.
more of a break.
Okay.
All right, sure. Happy to do it. So the next slide, budget grants. As we just stated, grants are a restricted form of funding that are treated differently than the special revenue fund. They can be spent in the way that grantor specifies. So grants to the city tend to fluctuate from year to year from 100 to 180 on average, totaling 100 million to 350 million. In 2024, the city received 160.5 million grants in funding from state, federal, and private sources, which converted 218 full-time employees. As you can see from the chart, the largest grantor of funds was the federal government in 2025, which made up almost 2/3 of the grant portfolio. Certain agencies in the city are more dependent on grant funds than others. The Department of Economic Development got 30+ million, where the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure got 25. Post was about the same, and the Denver Department of Public Health and Environment and the Office of Children's Affairs. You can see grants funding goes to some of the most important agencies in the city. Grants from private, state, or federal actors are a form of special revenue fund. However, the terms of the grant are usually a lot more specific. They can only be spent on specific purposes, sometimes like one specific project. I know we have a project in my district that got a grant from the state. So all those dollars are just for that project. So this is the total of the special revenue funds from 2025, or we're on grants. So grants. All right, next slide.
All righty. I guess
There
I'll
you
do
go.
that one. Thanks for giving me a break. So we wanted to talk about capital improvement funds. So you all know that the city has many infrastructure needs. You hear it all the time, whether it's 13th to 14th Avenue. It also has many existing infrastructure projects that require maintenance. And when we say infrastructure, we mean roads, municipal buildings, recreation centers, pools, libraries. In order to be able to maintain and construct infrastructure, the city keeps a 6-year rotating list of infrastructure projects that are slated for design, construction, or maintenance. This list is called the 6-year Capital Improvement Plan, or CIP. If you may have heard council members say the 6-year CIP. The capital improvement funds are used to implement the plan. And so, unlike other funds in the budget, these funds are not spent on operations. They are used instead to pay for the cost of design, implementation, acquisition, or material costs and maintenance of physical improvements. While these funds can on occasion be spent on staff time, the Department of Finance must sign off on each individual instance where staff time is paid for through these funds. All right, you can go to the thing. Thank you, sorry. So how to read the budget book. Let's get into the details. So the budget is hard to read, and I'll be honest with you, as a council person, it was hard when I came in to read, even the people who spend a lot of time around it. It's really long. It's over 800 pages. It's not exactly light reading before bedtime. And we wanted to spend a little time tonight discussing how to read the budget book. If you have time and interest, there's a really great presentation from the city's Department of Finance that goes into a lot of detail about how to read the budget book. And we have kind of condensed that presentation for this version in order to give that to you all. But I will say it was incredibly helpful. And surprisingly, the Department of Health the Department of Finance does a really good job of presenting these in easy terms. So the budget book is broken into 3 sections or volumes. Volume 1 gives you a budget overview of the city as a whole. It also discusses the various types of funds that we have talked about here tonight, and gives breakdowns and numbers for the sources and expenditures of the funds. It is broken out into general fund, the special revenue funds, and grants. Sorry, my watch is going off. I got to take it off. Normally Jesse's here to take my watch and I didn't do that, so I don't want to be distracted. If you have questions about the kind of funds involved in a project or the agency, you need to refer to volume 1 of the budget book. Volume 2 of the budget book contains the breakdown of all city agencies. This gives a snapshot of the important work that our city agencies do for the public, as well as detailing where in the government each agency is situated. Volume 2 also contains the breakdown of how the agency spends its money on personnel, supplies, and services, and from what source in Volume 1 in which it is funded. Finally, Volume 2 also discusses big changes that may be present from one year to the next and why they are present in the budget. If you want to know more about one of the agencies, Parks and Recs, for example, you would want to start with Volume 2 of the budget book. And then finally, Volume 3 of the budget book looks at the capital improvement funds, which we just talked about. As we discussed earlier, capital improvement funds are the mix of funds that support the construction and maintenance of city infrastructure. This section details the various revenue sources that comprise the fund, as well as other funds raised through the issuance of bonds. This section also breaks down the ways in which capital improvement funds have been spent by agency in a given year. And if you have a question about how an infrastructure project is funded or how an agency spent money for infrastructure projects around the city, you would go to Volume 3 to see the answers. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, no, we're still on this, how to read a budget book. I'm sorry about that, Temper. Okay, so I wanted to talk about some important dates as we sprint towards the approval of the 2026 budget. First, the October 9th budget proposal workshop, which I will have to be online because I will be ending a final day of a very much needed and deserved vacation. And so, sorry, folks, I won't be there. This is where council members submit alternatives or additions to the mayor's proposed budget. The proposals can and often do come from our communities and our constituents. For example, in 2023, community groups proposed that participatory budgeting be included in the mayor's proposed budget, and council members floated the inclusion of this proposal at that year's budget workshop. And then proposals are one of the most important times that we hear from you all prior to the October 9th date. And so we, as council members, we listen to you all about what those proposals should be. We heard from the Denver Basic Income Project. We heard that folks wanted to ensure that there were additional dollars in TRUA to be able to make sure that folks had access to resources in the event they weren't able to pay for their rents. It's how social housing was funded, our social housing study was funded, and how we got the ball rolling on that conversation. So that's a really, really important time that council members use to kind of vet, if you will, these proposals amongst one another and kind of present in some detail and the opportunity to answer some questions as well for to other council members. Second, we will be hosting a convening on Saturday, October 4th to ensure that we have the right proposals to the community. We don't want to just have these conversations and then what we end up proposing on that October 9th date is completely different. And you're like, what did those council members hear? That's not what we said at all. And so we wanted to come back to you before October 9th on October 4th in order to be able to share those with you all. The proposals that win the majority support from councils are submitted in a letter to the mayor, and the mayor will respond with the letter accepting or rejecting these proposals, which takes us to October 27th for the public hearing. This is a chance for you to make your voice heard in the people's chambers. And don't forget that those are not council chambers. Those are the people's chambers. And so by voicing your support of proposals that are rejected or accepted, like let's keep the momentum for both. This lets the council know that the people's needs are that you all's needs are not being met in the revised budget that the mayor would have given council members back post that letter. And so make sure you show up in chambers. I'm ready to advocate for the things that are most important to you and are most critical for you as well. Finally, Monday, November 3rd. This is when city council has the power to run amendments for the budget. These amendments typically start as the proposals that were rejected by the mayor, because there's no reason to run an amendment if it wasn't. I mean, I guess there might be a good reason to run it if it's not for enough money, which I think we've done in the past. The amendment must specify the project and the agency to be funded and the place in the budget where that money is being pulled from. It's a question of choice. What matters to you? And what are you okay giving up in order to get? Amendments require 7 members majority to pass and 9 votes to be immune from the mayor being able to veto. It's important to tune into the November 3rd meeting so that you can track the progress of amendments if any are being proposed, and if they show up in the final budget as well. There was something I wanted to tell you about the amendments as well. Oh, the source. So one of the things that you will hear council say, or even the administration say, that is if you propose an amendment that you have to figure out where that money is coming from. It's nice too, and it's super helpful, I think, as council members to figure out where the money could come from, but it's actually not a requirement. And so I think that's important for you all to know. Okay. So there are some major concerns we heard into the home stretch of the budget season for 2025. The first is that sales tax has slowed down. And as we discussed above, the general fund is heavily dependent on sales tax. When sales tax declines, there are suddenly holes in the net of the general fund. In 2025, sales tax in Denver slowed at such a point where there is a $50 million shortfall in the end of 2025 and a $200 million shortfall for 2026. This decline in sales tax is not unique to the city of Denver, and it is not, oh, sorry, did I just keep going? My bad, Timber. I'm just on my own here, just doing my thing. Sorry about that. So this is not unique to Denver, and it's not caused by homelessness. It's not caused by our migrants, which I think folks have heard in our in the universe. It is caused by the pain of inflation, as well as the federal policies such as tariffs, which squeeze consumers. So if you want to be mad at somebody, be mad at the federal administration. I mean, I could actually give you a whole list of folks to be mad at, but migrants and folks experiencing homelessness should probably not be on your list. Speaking of federal policies, the grant picture for Denver is another major area of concern as we head into the budget season. And as we saw from the chart on the grants, also 2/3 of the grant funding in the city comes from federal funding. Yeah, that should make you cry. There is a lot of uncertainty about how this chart may change in light of this federal administration's policies on distributing or not distributing funding, as well as the administration's hostility towards cities such as Denver, in which we welcome, and we are a sanctuary city. As we also saw from the slide on the grants, some of our most important agencies are funded heavily through these grants. That's not an issue of the federal government. I will say that's an issue of how we prioritize our budgets to be more reliant on grants or less reliant on general fund. And we can have a conversation about that in just a bit. Finally, Denver's charter requires that the reserves and contingency be replenished back to 15% and back up to the 15% and 2% levels as we discussed before. Right now, the reserves sit around 11% and therefore must be replenished. This will mean that the city will need to backfill millions of dollars back into the reserves or design a plan to refill those over time. If you want a woman with a plan about how we might be able to do that, please have a conversation with Councilwoman Sarah Parody. She studies these things in her sleep, when she's awake, when she's bathing, when she's brushing her teeth. She has lots and lots of ideas on how the city might be able to generate additional revenue. So and also Councilwoman Alvidrez, and Councilwoman Torres and myself are currently in a conversation on how we might be able to generate additional revenue. So that's really important for us to do. Okay, so why the budget book club? In this time of uncertainty, we want to ensure that our constituents are informed and, better yet, empowered to help shape the budget, accounting for all concerns we just listed. Ultimately, the budget is a series of choices, and we want to make sure that the people get their power in determining what those choices look like. And so far, the mayor has driven the choices that need to be made in the tough budget environment into 2020, heading into 2026. And we don't love that. I don't. I'll speak for myself. City
You
council
could put me in there.
Okay, there we go. There's two of us. We're an army, folks. City council will get a chance to make decisions as well. And we need you all, our constituents, to help inform what those choices should look like. All right. With that, we will have a discussion.
I did see a couple questions in the chat already.
Sorry about that.
No worries. I wanted to make sure we got to them at some point. I think the first one was from Norm. Do you want me to read it and then you can answer,
Yeah.
or we can both
Yeah.
answer? Okay.
Yeah.
So Norm says the 2%/15% of general fund appear to be the annual general fund amount. So that's the contingency and the reserve funds. I think that's what he's referencing. Or she, where they have to be a minimum balance. So that's the minimum balance, 2 or 15. They're annual additions, but spending those funds might be limited. So reserve and contingency don't decrease to like 0. So are they limited? I think that's the question.
The question is, can we go over the 12% and the 2%
I
in
think
terms
it's
of
what's the
savings?
minimum. What's the minimum we can have in contingency and reserves?
So it's the 15 and the 2%. And so that's why
Well, that's not the minimum because we're already below that, right?
Oh yeah, because we're at 11. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so I think they were asking, is there a limit?
Like how low can we go?
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I've asked Stephanie that, and I don't know if I know that answer, because we've always tried to stay at the 15 and 2% and not drop below that. I think the 11%. Oh, here's Kathleen. Thank you, Kathleen. I think the 11% is probably the lowest they've been in a very long time, and it's caused a lot of indigestion with folks in the budget management office because of it, or the Department of Finance, excuse me. Jesse, are you on? Is there? Oh, here we go.
So I think, yeah,
Yeah,
I think you're
so-
right. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. Hi, everyone. My name is Jesse. I am Councilwoman Lewis's policy aide. Couple of things here. There's not a minimum amount. Like once you start spending into the reserves for like an emergency, there's not a minimum amount that must remain in contingency or the reserves for any given year. When you're appropriating the money, there's a state requirement that you have to, the minimum amount is 10%. Department of Finance's policy is to keep it around 15% and backfill it back up to 15% every year.
Norm, did that answer your question? I think that's what you said.
Yeah, that was the person.
Okay.
It looks like there's a new message. Very good job answering my question. Thank you. Good job, guys. And then the next question was, what are these dates, from D Garnett?
The next dates for our gatherings, I assume that's what you're talking about.
I think they popped this in the chat when you were talking about the city council dates.
Oh,
Oh, here's Norm says, I see the dates here. Oh, that's for the book club. And there's the
Okay.
guide with other dates Jessica already answered. So they already answered those.
so we're good.
Great.
Okay.
Okay. Awesome. Last time I looked at the budget, it was a PDF. Is there any spreadsheets or CSV files that are available? I'm a data nerd from Kathleen. I wish. I don't think there is. No. No,
I'm not-
unfortunately, we just get the PDFs. I think, yeah,
I've not
there's
seen it
no,
in that way.
the auditor has said there's some other things that come after, like in the reporting process after the money has been spent. But
Mhm.
yeah, for the budget process, we don't get spreadsheets. That would be
We-
really nice.
Yeah, it would be really nice. And the complication is that the Department of Finance works for the administration. And so they are at the direction of the administration. And so I think even when council members request those things, they oftentimes don't get a lot of information or detail from the Department of Finance because they work for the mayor and not for city council.
Exactly. All right, so
Is that
are council
everything?
members, I think, no, there's one more.
Oh, go
Are
ahead.
council
Sorry.
members amendable to receiving proposals for other proposed programs or projects that have budget ramifications?
I
Are council members amendable to receiving proposals for other proposed programs or projects that we are always wanting to see proposals, I think, and projects that didn't get
Yeah.
included, whether or not how they were left out and that have budget ramifications. I would say that's a definitely yes, right? We're D Garnett at 6:09 p.m.
Okay, hold on. I'm sorry. I'm trying to find it. If if the question is, are we amendable to receiving additional amendments? Like, I think we're open to it. It's not necessarily a commitment from council members that they are going to run every single one of the amendments because I think what we're trying to establish here is that we want to make sure that when we say budgets are moral documents, that it's a reflection of like how we feel about our own morality, but also during a time where we are looking at such budget deficits and shortfalls that we want to prioritize our most critical needs, our most critical services, initiatives, programs, and our most vulnerable and marginalized people. That's the lens I'm looking at it for, but I'm always open to proposals. Like I said, we got some really good ones from communities in the past, and I expect to see the same thing.
Great point. And then Amy, District 7. If I remember correctly, last year's PDF didn't allow the find tool to be used. The PDF pages must have been saved in an image rather than a text. That's good to know. We can definitely request it be a PDF, but like we
Yeah.
said, not necessarily mean they're gonna do what we ask. But sometimes they are cooperative. It depends.
Yeah, I feel like Jesse, can you come back because I feel like you and I had this conversation last year about this. No?
Yeah, that's correct. So
Okay.
last year, the initial proposed budget, the thing to keep in mind is that there's going to be multiple documents that drop over the course. There's the initial proposed budget, then there's the revised budget with the proposals from City Council that were adopted, and then the amended final budget which gets passed. So the proposed budget which dropped, which was the first one, was not PDF searchable. They did fix that with the revised budget, and you can search it now. The version that's up there now is searchable on the city website.
So I wonder if we just proactively, Councilwoman Alvidra, see if it's possible to have the first version of that be what it needs to be instead of the iterations
Yeah.
thereafter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jesse, would you be able to do that? Request that, or should we email the Department of Finance?
Yeah, I
request
think that's an ask that you make of Department of Finance and the mayor. And I think it is something that once it was brought to Department of Finance's attention last year, it was corrected. It just people didn't catch it until it was time for the revised budget anyway in the process. So it's something that I will keep an eye out for, and then we'll message it.
Okay. We'll definitely ask.
Mhm.
Yeah, and the mayor's budget drops on the 15th.
So,
really
and then
good.
Norm says, I suggest the city lend an Excel ninja to the council during their budget process. That would be nice. Like,
What was it?
I suggest the city lend an Excel ninja to the council during the budget process.
Seriously.
Um, and okay, Sarah says, would council members Lewis and Alvidrez be willing to talk about their budget priorities in such a budget year? So I think she's saying like, what are our budget priorities as of like right now? So if
Yeah.
you want to go ahead and then I can follow.
Yeah, so I want you all to know that when I'm looking at the budget, I am thinking about opportunities for me to be able to co-create what those priorities look like within our city. And during this tough budget year, I'm thinking about how do we make sure that folks survive, that they have access to their most basic needs. And so I'm thinking about things that folks actually need, not the things that are nice to have. And so my budget priorities will absolutely be a reflection of ensuring that people have the resources that they need to be able to take care of themselves, their families, if that's access to food, healthy foods, programs, childcare, transportation, housing. Like I am what does it take for a human to not be in suffering? And that's where I'm going to be prioritizing my lens, my resources, my time, my thoughts as well.
Yes, and I would say for me, like food access is definitely an issue in the west side of Denver, so it's something I will be looking at. I am concerned about, I'm looking directly at where some of the layoffs happen, which is like Office of Children's Affairs, which I have carried a budget amendment for the Office of Children's Affairs almost every year. I'm looking at Safe Routes to School. I look at that every year. And the micro commuter is something that has been really amazing for the West Side. I think that the other thing that I'm concerned about is the root causes of crime. So looking at making sure that because the safety department hasn't been touched, like what are the root causes of crime? It's those needs that Councilwoman Lewis spoke to, so that we can make sure that we're not just trying to punish our residents for being poor, but actually help lift them up. And I think a couple of things that we have learned recently, one is preventing homelessness seems to be a new shift in the administration. And so that is a priority for me because I see people in my neighborhoods getting displaced and evicted constantly. And then workforce development as well is a priority. I know a lot of our workforce development programs are actually federally funded and actually they're not grants. So, but I will be looking at the Office of Economic Development, the small business office. A lot of the small business office was laid off as well. So I'm going to be looking at what are our support systems for our small businesses.
Beautiful.
All right, we will ask, oh, that was the one. Okay, thank you. I'm concerned about the huge healthcare cuts in Congress HR 1 and wonder what support in the budget for Denver Health. That's a really good question.
Yeah.
I think, we both supported getting them to the ballot so they have a funding source, but we need to make sure that these funding sources are not replacing our commitment as a city.
Yeah.
Would you add anything to that?
I wouldn't. I mean, I was happy to support Denver Health getting additional funding as well. And I mean, it's not going to be enough. Like Denver Health often functions as a state hospital, but relying on the city. And so I would say, like from a federal perspective, actually, I'm just going to cut them out because there's no point in talking about those folks. But I think there's a responsibility from our state to be able to fund Denver Health as well, that it should not just be carried by the city and county of Denver. And I think there's a responsibility of other jurisdictions and municipalities whose citizens are utilizing Denver Health, because Denver Health will accept anyone who should also be providing support to Denver Health as well. And so I would love to have a more expansive conversation about how we support Denver Health, not just as the city and county of Denver, but the surrounding counties as well.
Yes, and I think that goes into like what we were talking about with Parity looking at Councilwoman Parity looking at other funding sources for these things as well, because the healthcare is such a huge need. I'd say another thing that we're looped in on some conversations is huge cuts to call CCAP, which I actually don't know what that stands for, but it's for childcare for parents, and so that is being cut at the state level, and we're looking at how we can get more funding into there as well. So yes, we share your concern. We haven't identified a funding source at the moment, but that will be something that we look closely at. Gary says, how are you possibly going to cut 250 million? What key areas that you expect to cut and what amount? So first of all, I'll say 50 of that million was from this year. So that's already been resolved is my understanding.
Correct.
And then another 100 million was resolved due to the layoffs and elimination of positions. So now we're looking at 100 million. Is that your understanding, Councilwoman Lewis?
Yes, yes. And just to clarify, that's not council members who are cutting the 100 million. That's the mayor's office and his administration needing to figure out where that additional 100 million comes from. And so we will see. But what I will say is that we're going to fight to make sure that what needs to be prioritized, our priorities, Councilwoman Alvidrez and myself, are things that are not getting cut in the budget that we know that people need to live. Yeah, I'll stop there.
So what are key areas that we expect to cut? So like Councilwoman Lewis says, we don't expect to cut anything, but what we're going to look at going in is what did get cut and what needs to continue to be funded. And then I saw someone has their hand up. I don't know if Bree, maybe you want to unmute them for a moment. If you can. Oh, allow my care. Maybe I can.
Working on it. I think that they're calling in. So it's gonna be a little
Yes.
bit challenging. Give me one sec.
Maybe they disappeared, did they?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect, good. All right, so sorry to interrupt, but okay, so my name is Shannon Callahan, and I go by he, him, and so the District 6, I wanted to ask on that topic. So I understand about the cuts and the layoffs and whatnot, but my concern for that is that when they do these cuts, the people who don't have jobs now, how are they supposed to make the payments for the things that they need, like their food, their shelter, all of that stuff? That's a huge impact on, like, local incomes too. It's like a negative feedback loop. So my question for you is, how can we stop this negative feedback loop and turn it into a positive feedback loop?
I mean, that's a really good question. I think you have one. I think your participation here is a great entry into that. Having these conversations with the administration and sending them to your council member, I think is also really important to say, here's where our priorities are. I know that many council members, including myself, shared our concerns about the solution to figuring out how to cure for that $250 million deficit should not have been on the backs of our city employees. And we had no vote or influence over that. That was a decision of the mayor and his administration. And so what I think the council members are left with is for us to figure out, where do we have authority? What within the charter gives us the opportunity to run budget amendments to say, wow, we appreciate that you proposed this. This is a different direction that we would go. There were many council members who were opposed to the career service rule changes. That, again, was under the administration and the work that they do. And so I think council members can do so much, but I think what has to happen is that people show up in record numbers and force the administration to make different choices, as we talked about earlier. Otherwise, we get the same thing over and over and over, because council members can say it until we're blue in the face, but you are the ones who put us in office, and you are the ones who decide if we get to stay in office. And if we are no longer representing your interests, your values, your needs, that there's a level of power that you all have in holding us accountable to what that is and what that is not, from your perspective.
Yeah, and I would say when it comes to the, like, perfectly said, and especially about our laid off workers, we didn't have any say in that. But our hope is obviously they would get unemployment and be able to find reemployment. I think that's why we want to look at workforce development at that time and look at what kind of training can we do. And I also think there it could be potential to save jobs or bring back jobs. I am concerned about, how are we using AI in the city is a question I'm going to be looking at going into budget season. Are we trying to replace workers with AI? Because I know that in 311, that has been a concern. And so those are things that we can look at. And we can also fund positions, make sure to keep positions. We have funded, I know one of our priorities this year has been to fund a position in the Office of the Independent Monitor. That was actually in our letter. So we can also fund some positions. All right. So we left off about STAR program. I'm also concerned about the STAR program. Have you heard if there are cuts to this important program?
So I've heard from the folks most closely associated with STAR that they are expecting to see a gap of $1 million for funding, but we don't have the budget yet. And so I can't confirm that until September 15th. But I am supportive of STAR.
Agreed. The next, Judy Danielson says, I hope council will support a potential initiative being floated to tax high income earners, which can add essential funding to our state and still allow people to get their Tabor rebates. I mean, I think we're both for that one. And would support it. That is the state initiative, but whatever we can do, I'm sure we will be, we're willing to sign letters or whatever. What would you say anything different, Councilwoman Lewis?
Sorry, I didn't see what councilor support a potential initiative. Oh, tax. Hi, I would be very interested in seeing that proposal. And then how can we add essential funding to our state and still allow people to their town? Honestly, we need to get rid of Tabor. Tabor is the reason that we are struggling so deeply in our state. Which is why which is why school districts have to look at meals, and while we are looking at bonds, and why school districts have to look at bonds. And so Tabor has actually not been helpful in our fight to get out of this mess, to be completely honest. We support your priorities for food security. This question says, we support your priorities for food security, rental assistance, and small business support. Please prioritize community-based orgs that are overwhelmed with the growing urgent needs to residents at the same time that we are losing foundation support, city funding, and state funding. The mayor's staffing cuts deeply affect the work that happens at the community level. Yeah, correct. I've been supporting community-based organizations for quite some time, and have been instrumental in ensuring that that there's a way in which community-based organizations have an entry into the city, especially as it pertains to our contracts within host recently. So I 100% agree. If not payroll and vacancy eliminations, what specific alternative suggestions did council members make? So the answer to that is we didn't really get a chance to make alternative suggestions. While I did give the mayor some, it wasn't like we had a formal way in which we were engaged in the process of deciding how do you account for the $250 million deficit. Council members, I know for myself, I know Councilwoman Alvidrez, in our one-on-one conversations, we were like, here are some things that you might be able to do. I had looked at other administrations that had to deal with deficits, and they did a number of things. They asked our folks who have collective bargaining agreements to relook at those contracts to see if there might be opportunity to take a pause on on their raises. They had looked at the opportunity for community-based organizations to take over things like libraries and recreation centers, so that then both of those entities would have the opportunity to live. Instead of looking at furloughs for a year, they looked at furloughs for over the course of like 6 months or 6 years. There were a number of things that other folks had looked at. I actually sent out a newsletter, and I'll send it to you, of some of the suggestions and recommendations that we provided that could have been useful information. I will.
Yeah, and I would,
Oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. I was going to say, I will note, although we didn't get a chance to have a formal way to be able to make those suggestions during COVID, they didn't need to lay off anyone by pausing programs. And so we know that alternatives exist.
And I was gonna say, I know Councilwoman Lewis and I both voted against like a very expensive lease at the Republic Plaza that maybe those workers could have worked from home. Could we have saved money just by allowing workers to continue to work from home?
Denver
And we
Post.
also voted against the purchase of the Denver Post building, which incurred a lot of costs. And so I think when we look at the real estate that the city owns, there's also an answer there. We've sold real estate for very, very low prices. Could we sell it for a little bit more? So my first eye would have been, how can we look at these leases? Can we get out of this crazy lease with Republic Plaza, allow our workers to work from home, and wait for the web building to finish being constructed? That could have probably saved a lot of money.
100%. Okay, where are we? Sorry, I got a bit confused.
Kathleen Terrazas, positive feedback at 624.
Oh, thank you. Positive feedback include all the safety and community programs that they started the cuts with. We need more invested in STAR and cuts to policing. Hey, listen. It can be very frustrating when we have conversations about dealing with the root causes of anything, and we oftentimes don't fund those root causes. But like, that's why we're all gathered here, to start to say, okay, we know what actually works in terms of helping to pull people out of poverty, right? Helping to be able to reduce crime, helping to provide folks with stable housing, helping to make sure folks have access to affordable transportation or to a living wage. Like, we know all those things work. And that's why we are going to, as a council body, look at this budget holistically and say, if we're not investing in what safety looks like comprehensively for a community, and we're only investing in the policing of communities, then I think as a body, we can intervene with those budget amendments to ensure that we pull money from where we know it's not working and put it into what we've seen be successful.
Yeah, and I would say that's where your voices are so powerful. And thank you, Councilwoman Lewis, for putting this together so we can have this honest, transparent conversation with community, so that you make educated voices. So you don't say, why don't you take money from special revenue funds? You already know that's not the option. So that's why we're going to look elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know where to look now. Y'all are budget experts at this point. Yes, we love STAR. Thank you. Lots of thank yous. Yeah, a conversation around Tabor. One of our interns in the office wrote an incredible piece in our newsletter on Tabor, and so would be happy to share that with you, Cheryl, if you email our office or connect with Bree. Comment. We hope that council will consider continue to fund participatory budgeting. It's more important now than ever for strengthening democracy and people's trust in government. Absolutely. And don't forget to reach out to your council members and ensure that they know what your priorities are as a community as well. What's important to you, if it's STAR, if it's a participatory budgeting, you let us know. It seems that the 13 council members should play a major role in the budget and its approval, but despite the fact that it's the mayor's responsibility to make the budget, how would you propose to balance the budget, cuts, wares, or more revenue? We've had conversations as council members about generating additional revenue. The reason that council members don't have more of a role, if you will, in the budget, in the creation of the budget, is because that is how it is outlined in charter. And so when we say charter, city charter is akin to like the Constitution. And so it's our Constitution as council members. And so we want to make sure, unlike the federal government, that we are actually following our Constitution, even if we disagree with how it is currently written. And even if the outcomes that the mayor provides to us in terms of our budget isn't exactly what we would like, we do have power via charter to be able to make amendments to the budget through that amendment process that we outlined earlier in this conversation.
One quick thing that I wanted to add, just so that people are aware, the way the participatory budget has been designed now is that only the neighborhoods that have completed neighborhood planning are able to do participatory budgeting. I mean, I know we would love to do more, but again, this year's needs, and I think if we can secure that funding for participatory budgeting, it would be great. And I'm sure you agree, or did you have any thoughts about that? Because I don't want every neighborhood to think that they have participatory budgeting, but
I'm glad
fighting
you
for the
clarified
little
that.
that we can get. Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you clarified that. That's important information for folks to know. My opinion. This one says, my opinion is if council members are not formally invited, they should be, to submit expense reduction ideas, they should publish them. Those same ideas will likely help now. Just say in the chat where we should publish them, and then because I'm just curious. Bree also dropped the policy newsletter where we talk a bit more about Tabor. Norm, because federal tax now allow more states and local taxes to be deducted more than before, some amount of a state income tax increase high income taxpayers would pay wouldn't actually cost those taxpayers 100% of the increased taxes. I'm not sure I understand that, but if someone does, please help me. Sarah wants to know if there's something that you suggest We Together Colorado specifically do before Monday to make sure your priorities are in the budget. I mean, it's a great question. It's a great question, Sarah. I feel like the budget is probably cooked right now, if we're being honest. And that's just based on like previous patterns and how we've had the opportunity or not to work with the administration. And I think if the administration wanted council priorities, they would have asked for them, which is why we want to make sure that we have community priorities through the budget amendment process. Okay. All right. I think that was it. I think we got everyone. Oh, we have a hand raised. You could just jump in.
Yes, hi, hello again. This is Shannon. Now, I'm just wondering if you guys know Vibrant Bond. So now just imagine if this passes, people get paid to work on those certain projects. Now, do you have a number of how many the assumed income would be coming from that sales tax, because those people would be then spending back to the city? I'm just wondering, do we have a number on that?
We have a general, thank you, Jesse. I was gonna say we have a general number about what that infusion looks like. You want to talk about it?
Yeah, so there is a specific number. Give me just a moment to dig it up, but there were projections done for sort of the stimulus effect that this would have if it passes. So I will find that and put it in the chat.
Thank you, Jesse. Yes, Sarah, I just didn't want you to waste your weekend not frolicking. You know, we'll get to work on the 15th, but I didn't want you to spend your weekend, working on something that was already cooked. Great. Well, I will let September hop in here because we are going to do a final activity. And Timber's going to have some instruction for us with that grand finale, if you will. But also, thank you all so much for being here. Really, really appreciate you. This has been really great, especially to present with my dear friend and colleague, Councilwoman Alvidez, is just super, super appreciative of you. And so, Timber, take it away.
I gotcha. Hey y'all, my name is Timber. My pronouns are she and they, and I work for Councilwoman Lewis covering marketing and comms. So if you've read our newsletters or enjoyed our social media, that's something I get to collaborate with the Councilwoman on, and I'm really excited about. So we wanted to do a polling kind of activity with everyone to better understand kind of like what are your priorities in terms of like what programs would you like to see cut or what programs like really need to be funded right now? Because that's really going to inform what's being taken into consideration for council members as they go into this budget hearing process. So I would like to invite everyone to join our Menti poll. I'm not sure if people have utilized those before, but in case you haven't, Menti poll is a fun way of just having a conversation with folks. It brings it up in like this kind of like, what is it, visual presentation. I don't know if you all like visuals, but I do, especially Beyonce's, so we won't get on that topic. Thank you, Bree. She dropped a link in the chat to join. Once you go to menti.com, you'll have to enter 48631208. I see 16 people have joined, 17, so we're doing great. I will advance the slides very soon once I see a few more people file over. And then you'll have more instructions. So basically, you're going to enter your answer to the question on your phone or device that you're using, and it'll populate on the screen. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pull it forward. So the first question for today is, what programs would you like to see funded in the 2026 budget? SRTS. I'm not sure what that acronym is. Anyone?
Safe routes to school. Safe
Okay,
routes
okay.
to school.
Thank you.
Oh,
I'm new
there
to
you
the
go.
city, by the way. There's a lot of acronyms, so I don't know them all. But
Nobody
yes.
does.
Participatory budgeting, yes. STAR, TRUA, residential healthcare inspections. Parks, yes. Speaking of parks, this
Donna needs
Saturday.
the sign-in number one more time.
Okay. The sign-in number is 48631208. Parks. This Saturday, Park Hill Opening is hosting a preview of the design, but also a conversation with the community just around what do you want to see in this historic build out of a park. So join us. It's at the Hiawatha Davis Rec Center. We're also seeing other income programs, food security, participatory apprenticeships. Right, we're going to give it a couple more minutes for some more answers to file in, and then we'll advance it to the next question. Thank you, Bree. Infrastructure, schools, basic income, mental health, absolutely. Small business support, education, less money to police, housing stability, invest in kids, UBI, is that another acronym?
universal basic income.
Okay.
Mhm.
Nice.
I'm guessing. I didn't write it, so
Okay.
if I'm wrong, it's okay to call me out and tell me I'm wrong.
Councilwoman Alvidrez had a call out in the chat if we can be more specific around parks. So when we think about parks, what would you like to see funded in parks or with parks or around parks? I know that's right, David.
And
All
while
right,
you
I'm
all
gonna.
doing that, I'm just gonna read
Okay.
Jesse's answer so you can have it. To answer Shannon's question, the Department of Finance. Oh, it just went away. Okay, the Department of Finance estimates that for every 10 million in construction, it creates 130 jobs, 8.5 million in labor income, 20 million in economic output. Multiply each of those numbers by 93.5. Go ahead. That's it, Timber.
All right. So the next slide. All right. Oh, we're already in here. Oh, that's right. So what are programs that are not a priority for the 2026 budget? So thinking of things that you would like to see funding pulled from to make room for other recommendations. So I see safety, police, police. Seems to be a theme here. I don't, infrastructure that makes it more convenient to choose driving instead of public transportation. Business incentives, the Broncos. Everything needs attention, but redirection is needed. Police, flock cameras. Police would love to see safety dollars going to STAR and other programs that help divert folks from jail. Absolutely. Public funding for stadiums or private-owned facilities. Police, already overfunded, and council just voted to approve raises. Whoops. More policing, Broncos funding. More policing. Okay. Stadiums, marketing, the Vibrant Bond Broncos, large business and luxury development funding, street enforcement team. All right. We have one more question that y'all are welcome to engage with. If you haven't, actually, we don't. Just kidding. That's the end. I'm going to leave those open in case you all want to continue to share information in there, share your thoughts as they come out. Thank you, Lindley, for adding to the chat outdoor programming for students out of school as well. Absolutely. Create more green space in neighborhoods that do not have much. Increase trees and help with watering, sustainability. Actual functioning and clean restrooms and Bible Park, not gross porta potties. Amen. Also funding for civic assemblies, right? I know that's right, Kathleen. See what you did there.
It wasn't me. I also didn't put social housing in there, but I agree.
Spaces for community to gather. Can you talk about the public, how the public can get involved regarding the 2026 budget? Absolutely. So the public can get involved by, number one, engaging with this book club series. Our next event is going to be September 24th. That's an opportunity for you all as community to engage with the proposed budget from the mayor. The mayor will drop his budget on Monday. From there, the race has started, if you will. So basically on September 24th, it'll be like an open house come and go event for people to just understand what is in the budget and like really consider like where cuts can be made, what are things that you want to see, and so on. So that's definitely something to keep up with. Following council members on socials.
one
Sorry.
real quickly, Timber. So the
Mhm.
budget drops on the 15th. One thing that y'all could also tune into on the week of the 22nd through the 26th is the budget hearings. That's so council members will be engaging in a number of budget hearings. We actually just received our budget hearing schedule. And so that's going to be Monday through Friday, pretty much 9 to 5, essentially. You can view those online. Timber sent out a newsletter asking you all, like, what questions should we be asking as council members? If you all would like to, if there are questions that you have burning inside of you that you want to know more about an agency or a department, you could send those directly to our council office, send those directly to Timber, so that we can get those questions answered as council members, Councilmember Alvidrez and I, during that process. So I just wanted to add that just that week. All right, Timber, keep it up.
No worries. Yes. So the 24th, we're going to have the open house where we're going to meet, talk about the budget. October 4th, we are going to then meet again as a community to talk about budget proposals. And so this will be a time to where council members can kind of share out what they heard from community. This is what I'm thinking about. This is what they're thinking about as a collective. And the community will be have an opportunity to provide feedback on, like, hey, that's not really what we asked for, or like, hey, that's actually really in line. And so how do we help move forward from here? Another important date to really mark your calendars for is October 27th. That is the public hearing for the bond. Both of the council members underscored this, but it is really, really important. Oh, I'm sorry, not the bond. The public hearing for the budget. Excuse me. Wrong B word. It's really important to get in front of council and share what are your priorities, what are things that you support. And because again, if there are council members that are on the fence or maybe unsure on like where to support, your testimony can be that support. It can be that wavering commitment that they need, right? And so always contacting your council members, reaching out via email, via socials, checking out their newsletters, staying connected with council members in general, especially the at-large offices. I always emphasize this when I tell people about their representation in council. You have your council member, that's your district one, but you also have your at-large offices. And so utilizing all three to really make sure that everyone is on the same page around like what are the priorities of the communities and neighborhoods that you live within. I believe that's most of the events. So I think that was everything. Do we have other things, Councilwoman?
Yeah, can you drop in the chat the form that we were using to collect the questions
Yes,
that folks might have?
absolutely.
Yeah, Norm would like that. And yeah, you all can submit that at any time. And then Bree just dropped in the chat what Timber went over with the public hearing. It's important to note that you can sign up to speak or submit written testimony. That begins on October 23rd at 5 p.m. and ends on October 27th at 3 p.m. So please, please, please don't miss those dates because we want to see you. I love seeing y'all in the chamber, by the way. I mean, if the only way you can submit it is written testimony, but I love seeing you in the chamber so you can always participate online, just in the same way that we've just done here today. All right. Did we get everything? What did we miss? I think we're good too. All righty. All right. Well, thank you all so much. We really, really appreciate you for being here. Don't forget, while there are 2 council members here today. Oh, go ahead.
Once I see Norm said there should be a specific email address or webpage, and I think Robert created the webpage that they shared earlier. But it would be good maybe to have like one inbox. I'm not sure what you think.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make sure we address that.
No, you're right. They dropped in there the form. They dropped in there the form to answer the questions, but there is, oh, there you go. Chris Hines has the email address. If you send it here, it can go to every single council member. And I will say, don't forget that there are, I forgot how many, I think there are 10 of us now. Yeah, 10 of us now who are co-hosting these. And so, yeah, this is great. While you only have Chris Councilman Hines and Councilwoman Alvidrez and myself on this call, just know that there are other council offices that are incredibly excited, incredibly committed, incredibly engaged, and are excited to hear from each one of you. And so thank you all so much for your time. Really appreciate you all. Love you all real big, and you have the most amazing day. Night. It's evening. Bye.